Feel like you're the only one who doesn't understand the difference between a compressor and a limiter? You're not alone. After teaching over 500,000 people about home recording, I can tell you that understanding the difference between compression versus limiting is one of the key milestones in your progression as a mixer. After all, use a limiter where you should be using a compressor, and your mixes might end up like this. Keep watching if you want to finally understand why compression and limiting are two different things, so you can start to enjoy mixing and make music that sounds professional. But first, if you want to get compression right every single time, be sure to grab the free compression cheat sheet. Just head to the link you see on screen now. Now, before you can truly understand the difference, you need to understand how threshold and ratio work on a compressor. To help us out, let's bring in our good friend, Mixbot. Now, let's say we have a bass guitar part that's all over the place. Some notes are too loud and some are really, really quiet. Well, we could sit there and manually turn down the loud notes and turn up the quiet notes, but that would take quite a while. So instead, we can get our friend Mixbot to help us out, and we could say, hey Mixbot, every time it gets to this certain volume, let's say -10 dBFS, could you just turn it down a bit? And he says, yeah, sure, no problem. So we play through the bass track. Every time it gets to -10 dBFS, Mixbot just turns it down to stop those loud notes from peaking and to get them more in line with the quiet notes. But then Mixbot asks, well, how much do you want me to turn it down? Should I just turn it down all the way? Should I just turn it down a bit? And this is where ratio comes in. The ratio is how much you want Mixbot to turn the audio down when it gets to the threshold, which in this case we said was -10 dBFS. So now we're starting to see how compression gets complicated. So we say, okay, Mixbot, every time it gets to -10 dBFS, can you turn it down at a ratio of 2 to 1? So for every 2 decibels it goes above the threshold, -10, can you turn it down 1? So then it only goes above 1. If it goes above the threshold 10 decibels, Mixbot's going to turn it down 5, a ratio of 2 to 1. So Mixbot's happy, he's turning down the loud notes when they get to a certain threshold and by a certain amount dictated by the ratio. And then we can say, well, now that you've done that, let's just bring the whole channel up. And that's your output gain. So now the loudest notes have got quieter and we turn the whole channel up. So now all the quieter notes are louder in comparison to where they were before. The loud notes come down and then everything comes up. That's how compression works. But let's say for a second we want to tell Mixbot to never let it go above the threshold. So this time we say, hey Mixbot, if the entire mix is about to clip, if the whole mix is going to go above 0 dBFS, the point of distortion, could you just stop it going any louder? Because that would be great. That would really save me a lot of work. You don't need a ratio or anything like that. I just want you to stop. As soon as it hits 0 dBFS, just stop. Don't let it get any louder. Mixbot's like, hey, no worries, man. That's fine by me. That's a limiter, because now what we're doing is limiting the audio to the threshold. And in this case, we could say 0 dBFS. So there's no ratio involved because it's a brick wall limiter. This is why it's called a brick wall, because as soon as the audio hits it, it's not going to go any higher. Whereas a compressor, as soon as the audio hits it, it keeps going, but tapers off according to the ratio. So that's the key difference. It's in the ratio. A compressor has a low ratio, 2 to 1, 5 to 1, 8 to 1 is even quite a low ratio. Whereas a limiter has a ratio of infinity to 1. The audio never goes above the threshold. So what are the practical applications of this? I'm going to show you the one place on your mix where you need a limiter, and then everywhere else is compression. But first, to make sure you get compression right all the time and you use compression like a pro, download the free compression cheat sheet. You'll see a link on the screen now. It's completely free. Over 6,000 people have downloaded this, used it to improve their mixes. So let's jump into logic.
So where should you use a limiter? There's only one place. Let's keep it simple. On your mix bus. And that's it. Really, it's that simple. There are other places where you might want to use a limiter in your mix, but the only place where you'll consistently need a limiter is on your mix bus. Now, if you're sending your track off for mastering, you won't even need a limiter there. You won't even need a limiter anywhere. But if you're releasing your own tracks online, you need a limiter as the very last plugin on your mix bus, because this allows us to increase the volume without clipping. And it's really that easy. So this limiter here, you just want to set the ceiling to minus 0.5. Let's drop that threshold again. And we're just going to use auto release, keep it nice and easy. And we're just going to drop this threshold until we're seeing about 2 dB of gain reduction on the peaks. Leaves on the ground, no difference, no shame. Have you ever seen me cry on a winter's day? Nature is and nature does, but we'll live through from dust to dust. So we've got a couple of peaks there that are going a bit higher, but we're mostly sitting around -2. That's perfect. This is going to be loud enough to release online and compete, because so many online platforms now volume match. You don't need your mixes to be loud. That's it. That's limiting. Now, there are going to be other cases. I'm using a limiter here on the snare just to give it a bit more control. But 95% of the time when you're using a limiter, it's just going to be on your mix bus. And don't even worry about using a limiter on your individual channels. Let's just keep it simple. So then moving on to compression. Now, that's a different story. Compression we're going to use everywhere else. We've got some compression here on the guitars and also here on the drums as parallel compression. So compression is going to be used in every other place on the individual channels themselves as well. Now, this is going to be very genre dependent. If you're mixing a jazz track, you're probably going to use no compression. Whereas if you're mixing a rock track or a hardcore track, you're going to use a lot of compression to get that aggression. And if you're somewhere in between, like pop, you're going to use compression more to control the dynamics, to make sure everything's consistent in volume without making it sound overly punchy. So compression is a whole topic we could talk for hours about, but this is the key difference. Limiter goes on your mix bus to increase the overall volume, and that's it. Keep it simple. Don't even worry about limiters on individual channels because it's such a small use case. And then compression you're going to use everywhere else.
So that's the difference between a limiter versus compressor. Hopefully you understand that now. But there's a lot more to compression. Limiting, as you've seen, can be easy if we approach it in a simple way and we keep it simple. We just use it on the mix bus. But compression, we're using everywhere else. There's so much more to learn about compression. So I put together a free compression cheat sheet that goes through the ratio, the threshold to help you remember. It also goes through lots of applications, how you use compression on different instruments, different genres. There's tons of stuff in there. And if you really want your mixes to sound professional, you need to nail compression. So go download that. There's a link in the description or a link on the screen now. It's completely free. Now I want to hear from you. Do you use limiters on individual channels, or do you just use a limiter on your mix bus? Leave a comment below saying either individual channels or mix bus, because I want to know where everyone's using it. Besides that, I'm Rob from musicianonmission.com. I'll see you next time, and remember, create regardless.